When your team makes mistakes on jobs that lead to rework or callbacks, it's massively frustrating. Now, you feel angry, probably embarrassed to talk to your clients, all the while knowing that it's going to cost you big bucks. Now, the temptation is to give the team a good talking to and tell them they need to do better. But this approach seldom gets the results you want, and often you see the same mistakes again and again. Tune into this episode where we talk through the most effective ways to stop rework and get your team to maximum productivity. All right, welcome to the Profitable Tradie Podcast. Tony Fraser-Jones, your host here with Phil Smith, my good mate, co-host.
G'day, mate. How you going?
Good, man. Real good.
Threw it at you this time.
You did?
Yeah.
Caught me off guard.
Caught you off guard.
Caught me unawares.
Love it.
Yeah.
All right. Should we jump in?
Let's do that.
All right. Well, today we're talking about mistakes on jobs, which is always a fun one.
Mm-hmm.
Can be very, very frustrating. Obviously, when your team makes mistakes, you get angry, you can get annoyed or embarrassed or let down. It's really a roller coaster of emotions, if you will. And it's going to cost you money, lots of money often, which is pretty negative. And it's bad enough when it happens once, but when it happens twice, 3 times, or more, it really just does your head in.
Yes, and you find yourself having arguments in your head with your team, and then having them out loud, and you talk and you explain and you beg and you cajole and you rave and rant like a lunatic sometimes, and it is very frustrating. And you think about the damage it's doing to the client relationships as well, not only the money. It is pretty embarrassing. I think there is a better way than ranting and raving about it. I mean, we all get angry about it. And I think that's pretty natural too, to feel angry. It is your name on the line and stuff. But the real thing is, being angry doesn't really help in the long run. So we've got to think about how we can actually get on top of this problem, in a more proactive way. So I guess the thing is, can you actually get on top of it, or are you actually condemned to having to check every single job to make sure that it's right? Because that's what some people feel like they need to do, and you may have felt like that as well. But that's not an ideal outcome, because obviously you can't grow and scale a business like that. Or if you try, you're probably going to go insane.
Yeah.
And as soon as you have more than a couple of team members, it's very hard to stay on top of that sort of thing. So
Yeah, absolutely.
this is a thorny issue.
Yeah, and definitely one that can spiral out of control. I'm sure you have a bit of a story to kick us off.
It's like a metaphor, Phil.
Oh, you met it before?
That was my line. You stole that.
Hey, you got to love a good dad joke, mate.
You
Had to slip it in there.
Yeah. When I think about this, I think about things like heart disease. If you think about, heart disease, people go to the doctor, they've got, angina or whatever, they've got pain in their chest, and the doctor is like, yeah, look, you've got some issues here, blocked arteries, high cholesterol, blood pressure, and all that sort of stuff. And they'll treat the symptoms. So they'll give you some drugs, statins or blood pressure pills or whatever, or maybe even need an operation to clean out those arteries so you get back on track. And that's really treating the symptoms then and there. But we all know that there's some causes, there's some underlying issues that actually drive heart disease. And these are things that go on for a long time. And if you could deal with the causes, there's things like stress. If you've sat on your ass all your life and not done much exercise, and you've eaten a lot of fatty food, and you've drunk a lot of alcohol, and you've smoked a lot, and you've had a really stressful life, that puts a lot of pressure on your heart. That's kind of scientifically, facts.
Yeah.
We can fact check that if we want, but I think it's facts.
No, it's facts.
Thanks, bro. Appreciate that.
Gotcha, bro.
And so you're much better to deal with the causes. And I think often with this type of thing, when we have a mistake, the guys mess it up, we deal with it on a one-on-one sort of one-off basis. But it's a much bigger issue than that, and I think that's what we need to get into today, because that's what's going to really help us solve it moving forward in the best possible way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you don't deal with those causes, then unfortunately you treat the symptom, you fix the symptom, but the cause actually brings the symptoms right back. So
yeah, it's like the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff, isn't it? Like, you want to make sure that you've stopped people going over the top.
And the hard part is the more people you accumulate at the top of the cliff, build your team, unfortunately that ambulance ends up camped out down there. You might as well build a hospital down there.
Pretty much. And that's what it feels like for a lot of people in business. The more team, the more issues.
Well, the rate of people falling off the side just goes up exponentially as you get more people. So I'm sure we can look at some different ways of slicing this. But before we do that, if we don't deal with these mistakes, what actually happens?
If you don't have a good proactive approach to this, these mistakes will continue to happen. And that leads to a lot of frustration. And I think we can all understand when someone makes one mistake, but when it happens across multiple team members, or a team member makes multiple mistakes, that is very frustrating. And I think we all do get to boiling point sometimes, and we can literally lose our mind at someone. And as a business owner, I think a lot of us have actually probably said things that we regret, in the heat of the moment because of that pressure build-up, and it's often at our team, which is the very people you don't want to do it. It's like, you don't want to nut out at your family, but they're the ones you tend to because they're closest to you and there's the most pressure there. You can lose a lot of money. I mean, obviously with rework, it's very costly because not only do you've got the cost of having to fix it up, you've got the cost of not being able to sell that hour of labour again, and that's a huge opportunity cost. It's a massive cost. It's a hidden cost. So that's huge. And you damage the client experience, and you can lose clients with this stuff. Mistakes and poor performance are what frustrate your clients. And the other thing is that, often if you have a team member or two who are not performing, you can actually lose other team members because good employees, they don't want to tolerate bad employees. That really frustrates them. So if they're always seeing people making muck-ups or dragging the team down, that drags the culture down, and that has a negative effect on the experience of your other team members. And you don't want to lose the good people just because the bad people are kind of crap.
Yeah, it's true. A players don't want to play in a team of C players, so
they don't.
Unfortunately, they don't stick around. They definitely don't want to see you tolerating it. So,
yeah.
On the other hand, if we do have a really good strategy for dealing with this proactively and actually treating the real cause of these problems, some pretty big upsides.
Yeah, I think the first thing is you will have less mistakes. Like, the team will be better. You'll have less rework, less callbacks, less mistakes on jobs, less frustrated clients, less frustrated owners, which is good. And you can stay in control of your emotions. You're going to lose a lot less money. Your margins will be much stronger because rework it absolutely decimates your gross margin. Obviously, your client's going to be much happier, and you build a team of winners. And the thing is, a great culture is really powerful in a business, and winners love to work with other winners.
Yeah.
And so, if you help everyone win more, it kind of lifts everyone up. People love to win. It's way more fun to come to work with people who are A players.
Yeah, absolutely. So, let's dive into this. Where should we start?
Glaring admission, it's impossible to stop this completely. Obviously, it's impossible to not have people make mistakes. This is going to happen, and I think one thing is we have to be comfortable with the fact that people will make mistakes from time to time. And let's be honest, you've made mistakes as a business owner. That's how you've learned, and you'll still make mistakes. And if you aren't making mistakes or your team aren't making any mistakes, they're probably not trying anything as well. So I think that's okay. Mistakes will happen. It's part of being in business. It's part of having teams. It's part of being a human being. We all do that. And once or twice is okay because there are some learning opportunities. Obviously, it's not ideal, and you want your training to be good, and that's another issue we'll get into. But it's okay because there are some learnings to be had. More than that is an issue, and because the opportunity cost is massive. So you really want to limit it as much as possible, but it's going to happen, and just accept that. And if it does happen from time to time, don't get bent out of shape and nut out at people, because that'll actually make it worse. That'll make your team feel pretty shit about the fact they're actually trying to do their best, but they just had a bad one. That's okay. But I think the key thing here is it's when a mistake happens, and this is the big sort of shift. It's not just about that situation. You've got to think about the broader context. It's not just about the job they're working on now. It's about the whole business, and you want to think about that, because there's two ways to deal with this. You can deal with mistakes in a reactive way of, I just need to fix this situation, which is fine. And then the other way, which is really what we want to dig into today, which is where the real juice is with managing people, which is what this is about. Like it's about mistakes and rework, but this kind of applies to any issues in business. Whether it's your estimator cocking things up or your ops manager making some mistakes, whatever it is. Same sort of principles, is you want to deal with it proactively, which is how you create a culture and a business where people are trained and motivated and know what's expected, so they don't, you lessen the amount of mistakes made in the first instance. That's really what you want to stop people going over the cliff.
Yeah.
So two parts. How do you deal with it reactively in the moment? Because you do need to deal with it, obviously. That's part of it. And then how do you deal with it in a more proactive way so it doesn't happen so much?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, best way to fix a mistake is not to make it. So anything we can do upstream to prevent that's obviously going to be the better one. But sometimes we even have to do both, right?
Well, you do have to do both, for sure.
You got to fix the problem, but you want to also try to make sure it doesn't happen again. And so, looking forward to digging into this. But before we do, I think probably the first point to touch on is that hiring is bloody critical here, right? Like, we want to make sure that we actually get the right people on board. If you got the wrong people on board, they're actually way more likely to make mistakes more frequently, maybe because they're not capable or they don't care, or honestly, they're just turning up to work for the paycheck, and so, they're just a bit careless. These are all things that are going to help. If you get them right, it's going to help you make less mistakes in the first place because you got the right people. So I think it's just really, really crucial to have a good hiring process, one that really, takes people through their paces, so that you can actually qualify out some of the people that are not going to be, perfect for your business. Whether it's an attitude thing or a skill and capability thing. Obviously we use an 11-step hiring process, and that's something that I'd encourage everybody to use. And so obviously in this case, you're taking people through early qualification, figuring out whether or not they're the right type of person. You're figuring out a little bit deeper whether they're a fit with your values and whether or not they're actually going to fit into the team culture, whether the person has the right attitude. You're testing for skills, making sure that they actually have the ability to do the jobs the right way. And little tip here is not everybody is perfect. A lot of people are going to have some skill deficiencies or gaps that you may need to train. But again, if you've tested this correctly in the hiring process, you know where to train them immediately, and you can actually, improve those deficiencies really, really quick and get them up to speed. You're testing for their personality type, you're getting reference checks, you're making sure that the people you bring on are actually going to be able to uphold the quality that you want, and head off less mistakes. Plus, you're making sure that they're the type of person who can be coachable, take criticism. So that when you want to do these more proactive strategies to prevent mistakes in the future, they'll actually be open-minded to that and want to improve and want to prevent these problems as well. Because nothing worse than putting all this effort into training and heading off mistakes before they happen, but you're doing this with someone who just doesn't really give a hoot, and they're not going to actually implement any of the stuff that you want to prevent the changes in the first place. So we always talk about 3 P's in hiring. So you want positioning, so it's making sure that you position yourself as the prize, so people want to work for you rather than you begging them to work for you. Process, so again, using that process, we use that 11-step hiring process with our members, which is super well tested and works like a charm. And then patience as well, so not just jumping at the first opportunity that arises or the first person that applies because you desperately need someone. It's waiting for the right person. Because nothing worse than jumping at the first opportunity, it's the wrong person. I mean, nothing more costly than a bad hire. So we just want to make sure that we do this right. We bring the right people on, and all this is going to be easier from the get-go.
If you are really honest with yourself, if you think back on the employees who made a lot of mistakes, who caused a lot of havoc on your job sites out in the field, you'll find that often it was when you hired someone because you were desperate. If you're really honest with yourself, you snatched at someone, it was like, hey, they've got a pulse, they'll do. I desperately need someone, or I don't, I'm not really experienced with hiring. I really don't know quite what I need. Oh, they look okay. They spun a good yarn, and you can trace it back to that kind of emotional weakness. That's what it is in a way. With respect, because I understand it's difficult when you're under pressure. You need help.
Oh, we've all done it.
Yeah, we have. You have that sort of that weak moment, which causes a lot of these issues on jobs. That's definitely part of it. So, 100%. And you wouldn't go 4-wheel driving with a 2-wheel drive flipping larder, would you?
No, you
and
wouldn't.
So you've got to make sure that the people you have actually are capable of doing what you need them to do, and that's. Yeah.
Well, you also wouldn't take a helicopter ride with someone who doesn't know how to fly a helicopter. So again, make sure you bring on the right people, or otherwise you got a recipe for disaster. So I think after we have the right people, though, then we can get into the 2 types of approaches.
So obviously you deal with it reactively, which is you've got to deal with it in the moment, and then you can deal with it more proactively. And in terms of we talked about that analogy at the start with the heart disease. Well, the reactive part is giving the medicine and the treatment at the time when someone shows symptoms, and the proactive thing is like, let's lead a healthy lifestyle. Let's look after ourselves, drink lots of water, eat lots of good food, and do some exercise. But you will have to deal with the issue when it crops up, because if you don't deal with it, well, and you don't talk about it, they're kind of think it's okay. So that's important. So I think the key way to deal with it at the time is to be calm, and it is to realise that the blame game does not work. Blame game is a waste of time here. And look, I get it. I'm an expert at wanting to blame people for stuff, and it's one of the many character flaws that I have. And I have to keep that on the inside a lot as well. But the thing is, with the blame game, you realise that you've had a part to play in this situation because you've hired them, you've trained them, you've sent them out on jobs maybe that they weren't qualified to do or whatever it is. So there's some responsibility that sits at your end. And so that's one of the keys here, is to take that responsibility, because if you take responsibility, you can make some shifts with this. If you kind of just blame them, it's like kind of out of your hands.
Oh, it's crucial.
Yeah. So that's important. And the first thing is you really need to explain the problem. So tell them in detail what happened, why it's a problem. I mean, it should be pretty obvious, but it's not always obvious to people.
No,
they don't kind of get it.
Jump in there. I think anything where you think to yourself, it should be obvious,
It's not.
It's not. Like just assume it's not. Explain everything clearly. And, don't worry if you feel like you're laboring the point and you feel like you're telling them to suck eggs. You have to be clear. Like, I remember Kim Scott wrote Radical Candor, great book. But she talks about walking her dog, and she didn't know actually where to go with her dog or what to do with it. It was a brand new dog. She'd never had one before. She's about to cross the road. Anyway, this guy basically, like, tells her, because the dog's about to jump out into traffic, and he tells her, like, you really love your dog, right? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, cool, I can see that. And she's like, oh, thank you. And he's like, but, if you don't train that dog, it's going to die. Anyway, point is that he tells her, you need to teach how to sit. And he goes down to the dog and he points to the floor and really clearly goes, sit. And it sits, and she couldn't believe it. And then he turns to her and he goes, it's not mean, it's clear, and just walks off. And she said that was the best lesson she's ever had in her life. But I think when you're explaining the problem and you're going through this process, if you find yourself you're feeling like you're over-explaining, you're not. You can't actually over-explain. You just need to be clear. That's very important. Otherwise, how can they really understand what you're saying?
Yeah. So explaining the problem, explaining the consequence. Like for example, you've built a house or done a renovation, you're a plumbing business, and one of your team hasn't check flushed the toilet a couple of times, and you hand over, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Really simple. And you explain the consequences to your team. You thought, it's no problem, we just had to turn a tap on, or we hadn't turned the water on, or whatever. But the consequences, actually, I've had to field the phone call from the client. They've been upset. They're frustrated. It's damaged our reputation. I've had to go and talk to you guys about what's happened. I've had to send someone else out there. It's cost this much money. I haven't been able to do this job because of that. It's had an impact on these other jobs that I had lined up. And so those are all the consequences. So this is actually, doesn't seem like a big thing. It took 20 minutes to go and fix, but actually it is a big thing because it's all this knock-on effect, because this is like there's a bit of a domino effect in a contracting or a tradie business, because it's all lined up. Because your team won't understand that consequence. They won't get that. They don't understand that because they don't see things from your perspective. And you're not doing this to blame them or shame them or anything. It's just explaining it in a matter-of-fact way so they get it.
But again, you have to be honest, because the other thing is that they'll see every problem that they have or mistake that they make. They'll see that as a one-off occurrence. But what they don't see is that you probably had that issue or made that mistake because there was something you didn't know or something, a habit that you haven't created. And so the hard part is they also don't see the fact that you'll recycle that problem. This will happen again. So it's not just the consequence this time. It's like, if we don't deal with this now, you're probably going to do this again and again and again. And eventually we're going to have to deal with it because, we have the consequences or the issues of the lost money, lost time, lost productivity, frustrated customer. We have it now, but it's going to happen again. And that's actually where it starts becoming a really quite bad issue. So
I can think of a few clients who we've helped recently, and quality assurance processes they've put in place, checklists for checking jobs. So they've had those processes in place, but the team has still not done something, hasn't checked something off, and that tells you that the use of the checklist is actually intermittent. It's not consistent.
Yeah,
that's a big problem, because what's going to happen on the next job, they're going to miss something else that's probably quite significant. And so it shows you that pattern of behavior, and so you're actually starting to help them understand that. So that's huge. So take some time with this, and then check for understanding, so they can explain back to you what you've said, so you can make sure that they get it.
That's the key thing. Just to point out is, when they're checking for understanding, this is not you saying blah 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 blah. Got it?
Yeah.
And then they go because they're just going to say they've learned that. They know that that's the way to get out.
They
of
just
this.
want you to shut up at that stage.
Yeah, you need to get them to tell you. So you say, okay, cool, you got it. They say yes, and I'm like, okay, cool, explain it back to me.
Yeah.
And then that's where you check for understanding. Now, if they explain it back perfectly, cool. If they don't, try again.
Yep.
And then you keep going until they can explain it back to you perfectly, or otherwise they don't get it. Simple as that.
Then you'll see maybe they need some extra support moving forward. That's fine. You can deal with that then, because you kind of know where the lie of the land is, or maybe they need to be put on different types of jobs or whatever it is, or buddied up with someone who's a bit more experienced, so that this doesn't happen again. But that's how you deal with it in a reactive way, but in a positive way.
Yeah.
So that's pretty critical. But remember, it's your responsibility here. No point blaming them. That's a waste of time. You can get frustrated. I mean, I get that. I totally get that. As a business owner, you do. That's what happens sometimes. That's what happens a lot.
Yeah.
That's okay. That's why you should get paid the big bucks.
Yeah,
right?
That's right. Yeah.
But it's your responsibility to help them.
Totally. And then the other way we can deal with these is proactively. So again, treating that cause and making sure this doesn't continue to happen. So we've got a framework that we use with our clients for people management. It's the 4 C's.
This is an issue we're talking about, rework and callback and the impacts that have, but it's actually a people management issue, isn't it?
Well, that's right. I mean, like any kind of issues that the client, that your people are having, like your team, they're having because of the way that they've been managed or trained. And so, really the only way you treat that root cause is to train them on, their deficiencies and manage them to actually, be accountable and be consistent. And so when you're doing that, you're obviously going to have a team that performs more consistently and doesn't have these problems on a regular basis. So those 4 C's, really, really important. We got clarity of success as number 1. Clarity of process is number 2, check performance is number 3, and coaching and feedback is number 4. And they go in that order. So clarity of success really relates to having clear job descriptions, knowing what they actually have to do for their role. Clear on what your core values of your business are, how they should act, the rules of the game, what are some non-negotiables, some acceptable behaviors, non-acceptable behaviors. What are their KPIs? What are they actually working towards to measure their performance? Examples of their KPIs so they can actually see, what is a good result, bad result, all that kind of thing, and project expectations. So if I'm going through a project, it's like, what are the expectations on that project? But with all of those things, I've got clarity of success. What does it look like for me to do a good job? What do I have to do, and how does that look? So that's step 1.
Yeah, and this is massive because you think that success is obvious, and it should be obvious to them, but it's not. Because the devil's in the details here, and if it's not written down and communicated to them, then it's not really clear. And so clarity of success, one of their KPIs might be that all QA checklists are completed accurately on every job before leaving the job.
Yeah.
And so that doesn't mean they're completed that day or at the end of the week. It means they're completed before you finish on that site or out in the field. Another classic example here, and this is about job cards or time cards. Finish your time card. That should be obvious, but it's not obvious. What does it actually mean? Well, your expectation probably is it's completed in detail with the correct descriptions, with photos taken on the job out in the field, and it's completed prior to leaving the job.
Yeah.
They might think, it's fine to do it at the end of the day. I can do it at the end of the week. And they're like, well, I've done it, but you've got a mismatch of expectations there.
Well, if all you said is complete the time card, then clarity of success could mean in any time frame.
The clarity of success is not clarity of success.
That's right, but like the only clarity you've given them is so vague that they actually could feel like they have been successful by doing that 3 days later. Yeah. So again, the clearer you are here, your clarity of success is clearer.
It's about expectations. You see, unmet expectations are what cause problems in relationships, cause future resentments. And so if you match those up at this point, then you've got a chance of making this work properly. But if you're not really super clear on it, and they're all not written down, as you said, with all those things, JDs, core values, rules of the game, etc., then they won't be clear.
Well, you can't hold them accountable to these things because they don't know what they are.
It's like it's a bit kind of woolly. It's a bit soft and a bit fuzzy.
Yeah, and so that brings us to the second C, which is clarity of process. Now, this is all about knowing how to do something. So it's fine for me to know what I need to do and what success looks like, but now I need to actually know how to do that thing. Like, I know what a successful plane piloting mission looks like. So you take off.
A plane piloting mission?
I don't know how to describe this, but you take off.
It's called a flight.
A flight, thank you. Basically, you take off in the plane. Everybody's happy. You fly successfully through the air. You don't crash into anything. You land in the correct destination. Happy days. The problem is I have no idea how to fly a plane.
Yeah. It's only happy days if you're flying business, by the way. But
It's a different story. But my point is like it doesn't mean I can do it. Like I know what success looks like there, but I don't know how to do it. And so this is your second C, is clarity of process. So with this comes into a few things. There's obviously training of the team, so they actually are trained on how to do their job. But there's also all of the the places that they can go to to check stuff or to find out how to do something or refresh their knowledge. So do you have manuals that they can go to, ops manual, admin manual, or the likes? Video trainings within those where they can actually watch video of this task being performed so that they can really see how it's done. Do they have checklists? They can follow QA checklists, pre-job checklists, and the like, so that they actually can't make a mistake because they have how to do this process.
They can't forget
there.
stuff because it's all written there.
Yeah, that's right. And are you doing all of this and having all that available in a place where they can find it easily? This is all crucial for them to have clarity of process, or otherwise you're sending people away with a good idea of what to do, which is clarity of success, but no idea of how to do it, and that's setting them up for failure. So that's number 2, clarity of process.
Number 3 is check performance. So they know what they're supposed to do. They know how to do it. You have to 100% check that they're actually doing it the way you want them to, and they're doing what you want them to do. And we all need that because otherwise we drift off.
Yeah.
And so that is basically checking that they're doing it the right way. And you don't have to do this. This is the thing. You don't have to do this every time. You don't have to do this every single thing. But you do need to do it with a particular cadence. And they need to ideally not know when you're doing it. You might do it, once a week or whatever. Just maybe check that they're doing their checklists or check their job cards and stuff. You should probably check all job cards, actually, by the way.
Well, someone should. Maybe not you, but someone should.
That's a real frustration. And so you have a cadence around checking so that they kind of know that they're getting checked but not quite sure when, so they do it all the time. And that is incredibly important because it just helps them stay on course. That's basically what it does. It's like if you think about an airplane flight, Phil. It's like it's the getting back on course all the time because the airplane's off course most of the time, but it's always course correcting, and that's what checking performance is about. So you have a good cadence about it, you have some transparency, you check their KPIs regularly, and you look at trends. Are they a one-off problem might be just a bit of a blip, but if it continually happens, well, you've really got an issue that you need to deal with there. So checking performance is huge. I know it takes time. You're probably thinking, how the hell am I going to do that because I'm already busy? Well, you've got a couple of choices. You can do this proactively or you can deal with all the issues reactively. The time's the same, but the headspace is completely different.
Well, going back to that metaphor, it's like I can either change my lifestyle and start not having heart issues, or I can repeatedly have heart surgery. I'll tell you what, it's probably easier to change your lifestyle. Heart surgery again and again is probably going to get pretty tedious.
Not ideal.
But that leads us to number 4, which is coaching and feedback. So obviously, from there, they're clear on what they need to do and what that looks like. They're clear on the process, so they know how to do it, and they're being checked regularly, so they're actually completing these processes. The last step is you need to make sure that you're consistently coaching these people on leveling up, really. So, this comes into a bunch of different strategies that we use. So, we do a thing called the 20, which is a weekly coaching session with each of your direct reports or your team members that, report to you, which is a really great opportunity for them to talk about anything that's been coming up or problems that they're having or identify issues they need to work on. We do performance reviews, so that's once every 6 months. Which is kind of a culmination of all of their performance in that time. What's gone really well, what hasn't, where do we need to improve, and then from there we can make training plans. So over the next wee while, I feel like you need to improve in this area, or this mistake comes up a lot, or I think you have a skill gap here which is causing rework. And then we can actually proactively train that behavior so that they become better at that skill, and this happens less often. Obviously, if none of this is working because of an attitudinal problem, we can have disciplinary action, which again, it's never fun to do, but it's necessary. If somebody is not succeeding and they need an attitude adjustment, well, that has to happen, because otherwise you're actually going to throw them to the wolves somewhat and let them fail, and throw yourself to the wolves along with them.
And your whole team will go downhill if you don't deal with this. So
right.
you have to deal with the issue quickly and proactively, because otherwise the bad apple will spoil the barrel.
That's right. And again, if we're doing that training and it's still not working, we might have to put in place, performance improvement plans. So, more sort of structured performance improvement, where if they can't, actually close these skill gaps with everything available to them, well, hey, look, you can't keep everyone forever. And if they really can't do the job, well, then they definitely can't do it for you.
Free up their future.
Free up their future. And then you might even run group training. So if the whole team needs to get across a different skill, it's like, cool, we can do that together. It doesn't have to be one-on-one. You can put people through courses. There's all kinds of things. And then my favorite one is difficult convos. So, when something does go wrong or is done badly, you just need to address it right away. Like, don't be a sissy and try to save, your own embarrassment or awkward feeling by not actually telling somebody else that something wasn't up to standard. So, if they've made a mistake or something didn't go right, whether it's a skill gap or attitude gap, really, for you to not address that immediately is cowardly. It's just like if you saw someone walking past with their fly down.
Well, we'd probably laugh at them a little bit.
Well, maybe, but again, it's like actually the worst thing you could do is to not tell them. That's actually so much worse. So I think the big thing here is, don't be afraid of those difficult conversations. Have them correct behavior before it becomes an ongoing issue. And obviously it's gonna really help you out.
This is about leadership, and we know, we work with thousands of business owners, and we've right through from smaller businesses, 40, 50K in revenue a month, up to $1-2 million in revenue a month. And the more successful businesses are better at leadership. They've developed their leadership muscle. They're more proactive. They're more willing to do this hard stuff to give people the feedback that they need, positive and negative, so that they can get the result that they want. That's massively important. And that's about taking responsibility, because that little mistake out in the field that you see, a couple of mistakes, it's not, I guess the theme of this whole thing, it's not just about that, it's about the whole management leadership culture of your business. It's giving you signals about that you need to really address.
Yeah, that's right. So then we've been through some good points. Should we land this plane?
Let's do it. I like this. We should land this plane. It's been
We
a good,
should
been a good flight,
land
buddy.
this aeroplane mission.
This pilot mission.
This pilot mission.
Nice. Rework and callbacks are like any other area of employee performance. A proactive, get in front of it approach is always going to work better. To get your team cranking, you've got to spend time building the right systems and culture that will drive your high performance. Thanks heaps for listening. We'll catch you all again next time.
See you later.
Congratulations on being part of a select group of savvy business owners who are taking their businesses to the next level. And to help you on your journey, don't forget to check out our show notes for a copy of our free book, The Profitable Tradie, and other valuable resources. Thanks for being a part of this special group, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Profitable Tradie podcast.